Brazilian agriculture and livestock is singular, contemporary, competitive, incomparable. By looking at the cattle in the production fields, one can see how we produce with competence and love. Our pastures seem like a garden, flowers being replaced by animals, forage, crops, and forests, living in a harmonious environment suitable for food production. This is what we call integrated crop livestock forestry system, a technology that has carried out a second revolution in the history of rural production in Brazil in the 20th and 21st century. The first revolution was in the 1970s, with the creation of the Brazilian Agricultural Research Corporation, which opened doors of the Cerrado biome to the world. Until then, those Cerrado areas were regarded as inappropriate for production, but today they are true breadbaskets, producing high-quality food for Brazil and the world. Brazil is a country of large dimensions, with different types of climate and vegetation, and science has changed it, based on studies and experiments, turning the country into a giant, capable of feeding over 1 billion humans across the planet. The livestock revolution encompasses at least two major elements: the adaptation potential and the multiplication of ZEBU breeds and tropical forages, both highly productive. ZEBU entered in Brazil in 1870, imported from India, but it was in the mid of the 20th century that imports gained greater relevance. Until 1962, when imports of Indian animals were made impossible, Brazilian cattle breeders, true visionaries, had introduced in Brazil, according to the Brazilian Association of ZEBU Breeders, ABCZ, official records, slightly more than 6,000 animals were increased in number through a careful breeding process. Today, they are responsible for more than 80% of the national herd, comprised of 220 million heads. We can say that most of our pastures has plenty of humped cattle, as the zebu presents a distinct fatty hump on their shoulder. And this is how the global largest commercial cattle herd was born. Today, we export animal products for over 180 countries. When we envisage the scenario of our outdoor food industry, we understand why Brazilian agriculture and livestock production is unique. Some even plot against our local meat and meat production, stating that the Brazilian success lies on environmental violation and lack of protectionism policies encompassing our biomes. But it is already clear that the main reason for such positioning is lack of knowledge about our productive process. Anyone who questions the sustainability of the Brazilian livestock does not take into account the great work developed by researchers, technicians, technology broadcasters, and mainly the determination of women and men, coming from several family generations who are responsible for carrying forward the progress achieved in our farms. Not to mention the unawareness of several studies that ensure high levels of carbon being fixed by our pastures when grown in accordance with the most modern management and recovery techniques that we are currently using, extending their implementation throughout the Brazilian territory. In a recent article published in Revista Oeste, the head of research at Embrapa Territorial, Dr. Evaristo de Miranda, states that no one from any professional category, and not even the Brazilian state, preserves more native vegetation than rural producers. I really don't picture myself sitting behind a desk in São Paulo, working in a bank or in an insurance company or industry. Here, we do some office work, but soon after, we are in the pastures, we are in the corral, observing the cattle, and this is what I always like to do. According to that article, 26.7% of the national territory, over 1/4 of the total area, are dedicated to preserving native vegetation within rural properties. That means they are intact woods and forest reserves within farms. The rural community is the one that most preserves Brazilian forests and biodiversity, according to an updated study carried out by Embrapa Territorial. In Brazil, livestock wealth cannot be taken for granted, and it has not been originated through an exploratory activity. They are a result of the work and responsibility of each member of the production chain, including cattle breeders and genetic centers. They are responsible for the genetic screening of animals that have undergone a tireless breeding process. After all, a good stud is not born by chance, nor we see them being born every day on a farm. It requires a set of technologies, deep knowledge, and a lot of love. Everything starts by choosing the parents, identified according to the breeding profile, genetic and genomic assessments, and especially taking into account a biotype that suits its purpose. The development of sexed semen and also better technologies of semen production to take a safer product and a higher fertility product to the market was extremely important. It is through targeted matings coupled with technologies and the technician's sharp eye that the first step is taken towards the production of a good, balanced, efficient, and productive animal. In Brazil, cattle breeders have the privilege to make their selection based on highly reliable technical information. One example is the ABCZ breeding program, which relies on the world's largest ZEBU database and the largest technical team specialized in ZEBU breeds. Other technologies such as artificial insemination, fixed-time artificial insemination, FTAI, IVF, DNA testing, genomic and racial purity testing, genealogical records, and zootechnical performance index can still be used in the process. But those technologies would not be successful if we didn't rely on the talent and continuing dedication of the breeders and their field teams. We ensure the best care delivered through rational, sanitary, reproductive management, animal welfare, and respect for the environment where they live and produce. Come hell or high water, every single day of the year, we have the honor of counting on the commitment of those brave rural professionals who live off animal management, taking great care of those animals, ensuring the best treatment so that they can express all their genetic breeding potential. The Central, when they brought genetic improvement to the field, also brought a better reproduction, a better way of treating calves so that they could also reproduce or die earlier, whether male or female. So no doubtly, the Centrals, they had a key importance in the improvement we saw in the country. Livestock never stops. Today, we produce the studs that will be the fathers of next generations, and more investments, new criteria, and new technologies are being implemented every minute, increasing the chances of having better animals and milk production to feed people worldwide.
I think within our breeding stock, we have to get the best animals in the best conditions so they can pass on their genetic improvements, so they can be bred on farms for the next with their best potential.
However, none of this would be possible without one of Brazil's greatest wealth, the hands and hearts of its people. They are rural families, the roots of rural production, in addition to technicians and researchers who are responsible for creating the right setting and optimal conditions to provide abundance in food production. All this production is obtained through the compliance with the strictest environmental legislation in the world. Agricultural activity takes up 21% of the Brazilian territory only. It is in this area that the country produces with quality and volume, with crops that in 21 and 22 season should present yields of 300 million tons of grains. The most important thing to highlight is that Brazil preserves 66% of its original territory, according to studies performed by Embrapa Territorial. Breeding with dedication, multiplying with wisdom, caring with love, using responsibly, producing safely. These are our values. We will keep working, producing quality food to feed our families and yours. anywhere in the world. The pastures on the way, seeds and pastures. Have you ever stopped to think why Brazil abundantly produces feeding with high-quality protein more than 180 countries, including itself? Have you ever thought about the amount of technologies and research investments involved in this process? What we have in Brazil that made it so competitive in terms of animal protein production? Well, we have to tell you that everything started when we understood that pasture is also crop. Therefore, it requires cultivation with the same care we take when producing grains, for example. And more than that, cultivated pasture means productive pasture that, in addition to serving as food for millions of heads of cattle, is responsible for sequestering carbon from the environment, ensuring the quality of life for future generations. The most incredible thing is to think of the power one single forage seed has, which represents decades of hard work in selective plant breeding. Thus, those simple, delicate, and tiny seeds transformed our Brazil into a greener and more productive country, which is a high-quality pasture where you can minimize costs, be efficient, and the most important thing, be productive. We're not talking about any other pasture, a pasture with a good forage production, a good nutritional quality. So, pasture today for farmers is key. Grass or hay fodder became part of the life of a bovine in its first weeks of life. And it is in the pasture that those calves will remain most of their existence, kept free, in pasture lands, fostering good atmosphere and well-being. This is only possible if the pastures used in the production system have proper vigor and nutritional levels to ensure the quality of the forage feed, which is the natural fuel for all ruminants. An optimal forage feed must be rich in quality fiber, with good digestibility, adequate levels of protein, energy, and minerals. The use of nutrients is key for the performance expected from a bovine. The Brazilian cattle breeder is constantly concerned about feeding animals raised on pasture. Today, in modern livestock, it is already known that increasing the herd is as important as having good pastures during a great part of the year. We know that Brazil is a continental country with large dimensions, and as a result, there are tremendous varieties of forage adapted to each of these regions, with the specific soils, vegetation, and climates. The livestock industry in Brazil is divided into areas of native pastures with hundreds of plant species, covering 68 million hectares, or 8% of the national territory. And in terms of cultivated pastures, as previously mentioned, they cover larger land pieces, with 112 million hectares, representing 13% of the country's total area, according to a study carried out by Embrapa Territorial in 2017. The cultivated areas present a predominance of forages belonging to the Brachiaria genus from Africa, thus easily adaptable to the tropics. Since the beginning of their cultivation in Brazil, from the 1950s to the 60s, they have been highly valuable for livestock production. According to most Brazilian researchers, the kickoff for livestock professionalization in the country came with the introduction of brachiarias, capable of growing in acidic soils with low fertility, such as those we have in large areas of Brazil. With the multiplication of brachiarias, Brazil became known and respected as the nation of the largest worldwide commercial herd raised within a pasture-based farming system. Brachiarias have become one of the basic instruments for the practice of adopting sustainable technologies, which are increasingly gaining practitioners in the 21st century. Sustainable farming, in a nutshell, can be defined as the means of production guided by the respect for the environment, animals, and those who produce and live off the land, and the brachiarias are deemed as its driving force. Embrapa researchers also state that sustainability within Brazilian farming is related to the integration of production systems, such as the integrated crop livestock forestry system and low-carbon farming technology. In the crop livestock forestry system, we have several options of forage seeds and mainly technologies adapted to the several types of equipment the farmer uses to distribute the seeds. Good news is that we already have in Brazil certification seals for productions that are neutral in terms of carbon emissions. And modern livestock is concerned with producing meat and milk in environments where the entire vegetation sequesters polluting gases. In other words, it can be said that methane gas emissions by ruminants are offset by the growth of forage and trees in the system. Therefore, tropical forages are the basis for the most modern and environmentally friendly livestock production systems used worldwide. It is certainly known that the forage feed, whether green or not, is essential for the success of the activity in the field. However, the big difference is when quality seeds are used, with high germination power, adapted to the type of soil and climate, but above all, with proper planting and maintenance management. Brazil has developed several types of cultivation suitable for the tropical climate. And we must mention, once again, the successful integrated crop livestock forestry system, which mostly use no-till seeding, taking advantage of the residual straw. This technology provided a significant improvement in the germination of growth processes of forages. Pasture management is also a technology widely studied in Brazil, being the result of a lot of investment and extensive research, which guarantee the possibility of using them for many years without their degradation, keeping excellent nutritional levels necessary for cattle and its high carbon sequestration power, and is based on those management technologies that many degraded areas have been recovered on a daily basis, enabling the growth of our modern livestock, which is sustainable, productive, and competitive. The varieties we have today produce a lot of mass, a lot of quality mass. They have a high content of nitrogen, which is important because they produce more green mass. Protein is the most important thing. A higher protein content, a higher milk production, a higher meat production in smaller areas. Today, in addition to the idealized Brachiara, many other species and even hybrids are widely studied and produced in order to meet a demanding share of national and international markets that produce with the most efficient techniques encompassing the so-called 4.0 cattle raising. Those are well-suited forages that have their cultivated areas increased each day, achieving results that blow us all away, making us proud. Brazil, since the 50s, has always imported forage seeds, and today, over 50 years later, we are now the greatest exporter of forage seeds worldwide. Producing pasture comprises knowledge and respect for the plant, understanding its specific cycles and needs, which depend on the soil and climate of the region and their purpose. At certain times of the year, our pastures will not be as green and lush as a large green carpet covering Brazilian horizons. It is key to know how to take advantage of the productive traits of each tropical forage species. Even when they present different shades of green throughout the year, they must always have quantity and quality leaf in order to allow the maintenance of the cattle with the addition of supplements. But it's not just that. There's another strength when it comes to pasture. The forage plant offered to the Brazilian zebu the ideal environment for its growth in the country. The Brazilian Association of Zebu Breeders, ABCZ, estimates that the cattle herd is composed of 80% of animals with some zebu descent, highly adapted to Brazil. The zebu is a species that lives well in the tropics, just as forages, which cover today areas deemed as non-productive in the past. And in this new history of modern livestock, another factor had a great contribution. Until then, the country was a seed importer, and it started to produce those seeds using technologies developed in the Brazilian soil. It was a new boost for beef and dairy cattle. With that, other agribusiness sectors have also blossomed, such as the agricultural machinery industries and the entire seed production chain, which got involved and took great leaps in productivity. Brazil is currently the largest producer of tropical forage seeds in the world, and also the largest exporter and major consumer of such rich and economically competitive food. Despite the remarkable success, there is still a lot of work to be done. We are in a continuous improvement process, focused on recovering thousands of hectares of degraded pastures. Such area corresponds to only 13% of our territory. But we need to keep our commitment to the recovery process, and we will continue at an increasing pace, sensibly and smartly, producing more in more intensified areas. Brazil has the challenge of increasing food production as well. The country is seen as the great breadbasket of humanity, with a mission to produce at least half of the food demand for the coming decades. This means roughly 80% more food than the world produces today. And our Brazil does not run from a fight. It will continue working to recover our areas and further improve our yields. And so, rural people in Brazil have been called upon to learn how to produce with the modernities of livestock, without leaving aside their most entrenched and inherited values, such as dedication, honesty, and love for the countryside. And watching that fragile and tiny seed transforms into vast cultivated fields in Brazil and in several other countries, capable of feeding millions of cattle heads, and with that billions of human beings, makes us certain about the importance of a quality pasture cultivated and often recovered. This ensures the sustainability of protection, animal welfare, respect for the environment, increased yields, and food on the tables of families around the world. Most of the Brazilian companies that manufacture modern machinery and equipment for agriculture are family-based. Many of them were developed by entrepreneurs who had practical knowledge and a lot of love for the countryside. Great technologies that revolutionized and still do production systems in Brazil emerged from unpretentious but very bold initiatives. Humble men came up with real solutions to facilitate the work of those who plant, harvest, and raise animals. Equipment, machines, and implements, often small and practical, or even robust and of large dimensions, with the most diverse functions, perform today meticulous work accurately, helping everyday life in the field. The Brazilian farmer has many moving and inspiring stories, which are intertwined with the trajectory of farming. The innovative solutions created by them are examples of those stories that distinguish the industry in Brazil, mainly because they prioritize animal welfare. Just to mention a few achievements, today in Brazil we have real artworks manufactured for the containment and weighing of herds. Many of them operated remotely. In addition to the traditional cattle chutes, there are hydraulic chutes on the market designed for routine work without losing productivity in operations, adding agility and safety. They are ergonomically designed equipment with user-friendly keys. They facilitate the job for animal caretakers and don't stress the animals. A well-contained animal allows the performance of simple operations, with the application of medication in the correct dosage and proper spot without the risk of accidents. It allows for more specific managements, such as reproductive, using modern insemination techniques. The equipment, they are more modern, more sophisticated, and they are safer. Safer for those who operate them and for the animals. The changes we had, the technologies are embedded in this equipment. Today, we have chutes that are completely automated, padded in order to preserve animal welfare and also the safety of those who work with them. The equipment look extremely rustic from the outside, but inside, with the finishing with cushions, we notice the concern of the designers in not leaving exposed iron spikes or screws that could injure the animal. As part of the equipment, we also have modern intelligent weighing systems designed to ensure individual or group monitoring. Those are weighers installed in strategic locations, suitable for the farm management, which allow precise monitoring for both individual weight gain and the evolution of the herd performance. In feedlots, this control can be performed daily, helping to adjust food quantity, ensuring the programmed gain. Waste is avoided. Other equipment allows excellence in livestock. They are blenders, feed distributors, and grain grinders, which quickly and efficiently process the concentrated feed for feedlot, ensuring that everyone receives a uniform quantity, accurately. This is known as precision livestock farming, which provides adequate nutrition with highly efficient nutritional management. The precision agriculture is to have data in order to take better decisions, and the most individualized the best, so treating each animal and having data from each animal in order to take the best decisions. Brazil has more than 5 million rural properties in all its regions. Production in these establishments is regarded as a primary activity that requires improvements. Over the years in the country's recent history, agriculture has gained allies in science, universities, laboratories, and research centers where it sought innovations and expressive and immediate results mostly. It was a perfect marriage, livestock and science, and it's through the industry that such results can be put into practice through the development of products and innovations created on a scientific basis to meet the demanding and productive livestock. The need to advance and supply products has driven the development of several input processing industries. They are modern, innovative industries that produce products ranging from animal reproduction, animal nutrition to labs, encompassing vaccines and agrochemicals. In Brazil, there is also a huge number of industries from many other segments that jointly help in productivity and, above all, in the quality of what we produce. The machines cannot simply be machines that fulfill the minimum. It must be a piece of equipment to offer a good quality of the service you render, save the most in terms of fuel and energy due to sustainability. Just to mention a few examples, those are milking machines, tractors, trucks, irrigation pivots, planters, harvesters, and much more. In Brazil, we highlight the veterinary industry, recognized worldwide for the high quality of products and technologies employed. With great pride, Brazil has become a reference in the production of vaccines, especially for the vaccine against foot and mouth disease. To the Foot and Mouth Disease Eradication Plan developed by the Ministry of Agriculture of Brazil and the excellent quality of the vaccines produced here, in a few years the entire national territory will be considered as a disease-free area, without the need to continue with the herd immunization. Brazil will soon be an unrestricted market for the export of animal products. And all this quality is not restricted to vaccines, as several other categories of medicines, disinfectants, hormones, antibiotics, and antiparasitics are produced and exported, and the Brazilian science and technology complies with the sanitary and animal health levels determined by the demanding world markets. In addition to the veterinary industry, the biotechnology industry places Brazil more and more at the forefront of research and innovation in the livestock industry, not only in the production of embryos, but also in the production of extraordinary molecules capable of developing innovative products that maximize gains in reproduction and in animal lives. The Union of Agriculture, Cattle Raising, and Industrial Activities gave life to the sector that most moves the country's economy, agribusiness. In 2020, when most segments of the economy in Brazil and in the world were stagnant because of the coronavirus pandemic, Brazilian agribusiness kept pace, reaching a growth of 24% in the year. As a consequence, agribusiness is responsible for more than a quarter of the wealth produced in Brazil. This is the result of the union of sectors that operate in a harmonious, cooperative manner and, above all, aware of its importance for the maintenance of peace through food production and for nature conservation for future generations. Over the years, Brazilian agribusiness chains have become a benchmark worldwide. We cannot forget that agribusiness is made up of agents from the commercial, administrative, strategic, scientific, and technical sectors. Technologies, proper management, sanitary responsibility, animal welfare, food safety, environmental recovery, genetic improvement, and increased yields are the result of the work of thousands of professionals in agricultural sciences, such as zootechnicians, veterinarians, and agronomists, which strive not only to develop more innovative and efficient technologies every day, but also to put them into practice in the field. The support tools created by brilliant minds, the love of rural men and women, the high-quality products, inputs, and technologies produced here, and the professionals who make the planting, harvesting, and breeding their true life reasons are those responsible for such an extraordinary advancement in the production of animal protein in Brazil. It is no coincidence that Brazil is at the top among food producers and exporters. The great challenge of the world today is to guarantee food for a population of nearly 10 billion people, forecasted for 2050. Brazil is the only country capable of meeting this gigantic demand with greater efficiency, and always with an eye on increasing yields and maintaining its most precious asset, the environment. In order to do so, count on us, on our Brazilian people, on our livestock, on our love to produce and feed. The dirt trail. Daylight has not yet broken and he is already up. He has his tasks in mind, in rain or shine. It doesn't matter. The business of cattle breeding does not stop. There are 365 days of work throughout the year. The result is animal protein to feed the world. This is a depiction of the Brazilian cattle breeder who not only honors the work he learned from their parents and grandparents, but also always has an eye on new techniques recommended by researchers and scientists. The Brazilian farmer is the main stakeholder in producing and preserving the environment where he lives, and he is the strongest link between science and the practice of farm production. Without their work, science would be just on paper. The cattle breeder was born with the gift of producing, of breeding, and he spends his life learning and developing concepts and lessons. One of these lessons, which is learned early on from nature itself, is that the soil and the plants are our greatest wealth, and that life is a cycle in which you reap what you sow. And the important thing is not the size of the farm, but the use you make of it, always respecting the environment, respecting animal welfare. From a social standpoint, we need to seek the best we can. Today, the Brazilian cattle breeder produces ideas, innovations, and food faster than in past generations. For our cattle breeder, keeping the environment healthy is the basic principle for raising and maintaining animals. Here, the farmer takes care of several aspects of the production system. He adopts, for example, simple care measures, such as providing the animals with an environment that ensures adequate pasture management, aligned to the shade of the trees, a scenario allowed in the crop livestock forestry integration technology, which is expanding every year in Brazil. A harmonious environment with well-managed pastures, genetics, health, and nutrition guarantees the increasing success of our cattle breeding. The Brazilian producer is a simple person, dedicated to the land, who has learned to transform daily management into sophisticated production operations and structures, which guarantee productivity and quality in the field. Every little piece of ground, every drop of sweat, every animal well treated on pasture or in feedlots guarantee a portion of the success of our cattle breeding, with a sustainable production standard. Brazilian scientists are reinforcing to the world that we produce much more meat and milk than in the past, in reduced areas of pasture thanks to a significant increase in productivity. We are living in an era of transformation, which will bring even more success to the world's main beef cattle production.
Ancorado ao largo de Fernando de Noronha, na praia de Santo Antônio, o navio dinamarquês Ilsa Claus, especial para transporte de animais, traz a bordo da longínqua Bombaim, na Índia, o esperado lote de gado reprodutor de várias raças.
We have a beautiful history. With a few imported ZEBU cattle, Brazil managed to form the largest commercial herd in the world. We are proud of that. And this was due to the adaptability of the animals, aligned to the production method, the selection criteria, and the producer's love for planting, harvesting, and breeding. In Brazilian pastures, animals of a wide range of breeds are born, grow, and multiply, with emphasis on the ZEBU breeds, which today account for more than 80% of the national herd, whether as purebred or crossbred animals. This means that Brazilian cattle, the fruit of great selection and genetic improvement work, have the potential to produce meat and milk in Brazilian soil and in several countries around the world. This differentiated genetics allows us to share all the categories of cattle we produce with the world. And in this scenario, another branch of the Brazilian livestock production activity has also become a world reference. It is the segment of live animal exports. We have the fat cattle ready for slaughter, and we have calves and yearlings conceived through state-of-the-art technology and genetics. And if necessary, we have breeding heifers and bulls to develop herds in many countries around the world. Brazil can meet any demand for live animals, regardless of the needs and particularities of each country or customer. Animals of several breeds are raised in our pastures or feedlots, such as Brahman, Gir, and Dairy Gir, Girolando, Guzerá, Guzerlando, Nelore, Tabapuã, Indo-Brazil, Sindhi, and many others, including species such as buffalo, horses, sheep, and goats. The export of live animals is a recent activity in our country. It grew, driven by foreign demand. In 2002, we shipped only 2 heads, and since then, this number skyrocketed. We shipped 810,000 heads in 2018. The export process is very strict to guarantee the quality and sanitary safety of the shipped animals. The first step is with the choice, selection, and identification of animals according to an evaluation that meets the technical requirements of the importer. With a herd of about 220 million head, we have enough volume for these choices to be made with great discretion. The selected animals must undergo a battery of pre-isolation exams. Before leaving their farms of origin, the animals must be proven healthy and free of any disease. only animals with approved exams are transported to quarantine. They are also inspected by the technical team of the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Supply of Brazil, ensuring that they are in accordance with the requirements of the Brazilian regulations. Next, another series of examinations begins, fulfilling the requirements of the sanitary protocol agreed between Brazil and the government of the importing country. In addition to health concerns, proper nutritional management and facilities that meet safety and animal welfare requirements are other factors to be carefully examined. An animal treated with care responds through its performance in weight gain or milk production. Thus, day by day, they are followed, cared of, and fed with respect, dedication, and love. Before they leave the quarantine facility, the legal procedures are formalized through the health documentation of the animals, ensuring compliance with national and international laws. Only after this process, the adaptation to the travel conditions begin, which, regardless of their duration, are carried out with great care. The air, sea, and land logistics are true expeditions. Transportation to ports or airports and shipping comply with all health and welfare standards. Ships, planes, or transport trucks are adapted to meet the most demanding markets in the world. The careful management intensifies inside the vessels. Veterinarians, nutritionists, and a specialized management team accompany the animals to their final destination.
The exports of live animals represent another commercial opportunity for Brazil, in addition to the dissemination of our breeds abroad that until recently, I don't know, like 30 years ago. And today we are beginning to be relevant worldwide.
There is intense concern that all animals shipped arrive in the importing country in the best conditions and with guarantees that they have been transported in compliance with all nutritional, health, and welfare requirements. But the export process does not end when the animals arrive in the importing country. From then on, the work of monitoring and observing the evolution of the animals in their new habitat begins. Let's keep moving forward, facing challenges, crossing borders and seas, and producing with innovation, dedication, and love. After all, we will continue feeding our country and yours. Many who see Brazil amongst the top food-producing nations have no idea how our production system is developed. Due to lack of knowledge and misinformation, they think that we do not take care of nature. Fortunately, many are surprised when they get to know our sustainable production system. Our production system has been improving day by day, and today we raise our animals in a much more efficient way than 30 years ago. Today, the cattle breeder not only thinks but acts differently than he did decades ago. If we compare images of zebu bulls from the 1960s with those of the 1970s and 80s, we can see such an evolution. The observation becomes even more glaring if we compare the old images with that of the Brazilian bulls in 2021. The current ones demonstrate that the selection and dedication of all the breeders throughout time have brought us to a much more advanced stage. Animals present better balance, displaying harmony between their body development and their productive and reproductive capacity without losing the traits of their breed.
Zebu entered Brazil by the end or the mid-19th century and caused a true revolution in the livestock sector because of its adaptability traits. That's the main feature of the zebu for the tropics. But breeders soon realized it was possible to improve them Through systematic work, genealogical records were created, they organized and created the breeds, and we started a breeding program in the 60s at ABCZ.
Have you ever analyzed why the biotypes of animals have changed so much? The answer lies in several factors. We already know the importance of good pastures and the best nutritional, health, and reproductive management, as well as concern for animal welfare. Together, those are key contributions to achieving such high levels of productivity. Another factor, however, was crucial: genetics. Our success story was only written because Brazil is made of farmers, breeders, and people from the countryside with a gift for breeding and producing. Researchers at Embrapa say that one of the greatest contributions of science to revolutionize Brazilian livestock farming was the improvement in herd genetics, especially with the inclusion of the ZEBU breed in most of the Brazilian territory. They also state that, through the parameter of heritability, it is possible to measure how much genetics and environment can contribute to the improvement of herds. For more than 50 years, the ZEBU breed has been part of breeding programs. An example of these is the growth rate control started by ABCZ in 1968, soon followed by weight gain tests and milk output control. In the 1980s, genetic improvement in Brazilian cattle breeding took a great leap forward. The knowledge accumulated by researchers over decades could be applied in practice. In addition, the advent of information technology has made it possible to cross-reference research data in animal genetics. Processing the data was impossible because it required enormous calculations. After the 1990s, however, the processing of data was left to computers. Scientists were then able to see in practice concepts widespread at the time. This is how one of the tools that revolutionized Brazilian beef cattle breeding came about: the EPD, expected progeny differences. With the EPD, genetic evaluation took another direction, allowing the evolution of our herds in traits such as weight gain and weaning, at yearling, carcass weight, maternal ability, calving interval, stability, among many others that are now selected by scientists and breeders, increasingly united in the search for the improvement of the quality of animals. Today, some genetic improvement programs, such as the ZEBU Genetic Improvement Program of ABCZ, work with innovations that are increasingly gaining the confidence of technicians and breeders, as is the case of genomics, a technology that safely identifies the potential of each individual. Today, we live through a unique moment in cattle breeding. We can finally combine all the most modern and reliable technologies with the practical and careful knowledge of the human eye.
We added a technology that is probably gonna help a lot of people to reduce their mistakes in terms of breeding and so on. That's a genomic technology. We believe genetic assessments, when we start using animals without offsprings, we have their information and data from their ancestors. When we add genomics, it's like we have their data and their ancestors' data with the same reliability as if they had already had 20 offsprings.
The breeding work conducted with the use of genetic or genomic evaluations, combined with visual evaluation, brings much better chances of having balanced calves in terms of production and reproduction potential, and in their body biotype. And it's the trained eyes of the technicians and breeders that polish the work of targeted breeding, based on irreplaceable knowledge and practical skills. These professionals mate several generations of herds and have the satisfaction of following their evolution. How gratifying it is to see a child surpass the qualities of their parents. It is the differential of the Brazilian technician who has the ability to continue improving what is already very good. And the evolution does not stop there. Although we began as importers of cattle, today we are exporters of superior genetics. However, we still face challenges, and it raises the following questions. Who will be the breeding animals of tomorrow? What traits should we improve? It's not every day that exceptional calves or heifers are born on the farm. But when they are born, They are celebrated and cared for with the utmost diligence. Certainly, they are the fruits of targeted breeding, based on the rigorous selection of their parents, grandparents, and often great-grandparents. Those exceptional animals soon attract attention and are closely monitored day by day. They receive adequate nutrition and sanitary care to allow them to live up to their genetic potential. And when they stand out from the others, they are chosen as future bulls or donors who should pass their best productive, reproductive, and morphological characteristics on to their offspring. After the choice, it is time to strictly comply with the sanitary requirements at the semen or embryo centers, and in order to multiply the genetic material for the cattle breeding developed in the tropics. The Brazilian centers, besides being accredited by the Brazilian Ministry of Agriculture, must have the official accreditation by the importing countries as well. The animals are tested before they leave their farm of origin. They also go through a series of examinations as soon as they arrive at the centers. The requirements vary according to the protocol of each country. The Brazilian ministry is responsible for negotiating protocols and ensuring that Brazilian genetics reach any part of the world with sanitary safety. After this marathon, the animals are ready to move to the production area of the centers, where they will be cared for, receiving specific management, so quality semen or embryos can be collected. The collected semen goes straight to the laboratory, where the analysis of sperm volume, motility, vigor, concentration, and morphology starts immediately. It is only after the approval of the quantitative and qualitative analysis that the semen is cleared out for the dilution and filling processes in duly identified vials. After that, the material is ready for freezing. The embryo donors need to undergo a more detailed process. After preparing for follicular aspiration, oocytes are obtained and sent to the lab, where they undergo a maturation process for 20 to 24 hours. During this period, several changes take place, and the female gamete can be fertilized. The next step is the fertilization of the mature oocytes. That is where life begins. The next step is the in vitro cultivation of the embryos, where the embryonic development begins prior to implantation. There is still the morphological classification process of the embryos. Only the suitable ones will be selected to be implanted or frozen. The process does not end there. To be transported to any country, the semen and embryos need to be kept in nitrogen tanks at very low temperature, ensuring their preservation.
There is no future in Brazilian cattle breeding if we don't consider sustainability. We cattle breeders know this. ABCZ today, through its partners, especially through Apex, its strongest partner, has contributed a lot for the export of our products built from the inside. So we raised the bar for it.
Yes, the whole process is built on technology and extreme dedication. And here in Brazil, we have all that and much more. We are very proud of the visionaries who started this journey and taught us to love cattle breeding. Improving our work and broadening our horizons will continue to be our daily challenges. And today, we are certain to have chosen the best course, building our own path along the way. The Path of ZEBU.